Blog Talk Radio.
Welcome to the Institute for Personal Development, Kriya Yoga Ashram, where total consciousness is the new frontier.
Kriya Yoga is union of the individual with the divine. Join us as we explore the practices to initiate this process.
Good morning. Welcome to the Voice of Yoga. Let's talk consciousness. I am your hostess, Winton, and with me is Kenny Toy, also known as Swami Jayananda, founder of the Institute for Personal Development, located here in Hampton, New Hampshire. Good morning, Swami. Thank you for being here today. How are you?
Good morning. I'm doing pretty good today. How about you?
Well, I'm doing great today, too. Thanks for asking. And we want to thank you all for tuning in. Today on the Voice of Yoga, we will talk about looking for the secret satisfaction that accompanies not being in charge of your life. Listen as we discuss the difference between seeing with the material senses and beholding with the spiritual senses. In this show, we will explain how knowing the truth is a demonstrable principle when it is perceived spiritually. That which is born of the flesh is flesh, and that which is born of the spirit is spirit. That was from John 3:6. Welcome to the Voice of Yoga. We are talking consciousness. Join the Kriya Yoga Spiritual Advance to get the light in your soul and walk by faith, not by sight. Swami, the title of today's show is Secret Success of Spiritual Sense. So first of all, can you just explain to our listeners what we mean by spiritual sense?
Well, what we mean by not being in charge of your life is letting divine law express itself through you as you, putting off the personal sense by not trying, striving, planning, or seeking, but instead letting, allowing, knowing, and realizing only divine omnipresence is here now. Spiritual sense is really what happens when we're no longer influenced by our material senses.
So the secret success that is written in the title, how is that relating to spiritual sense?
Start to recognize the way we're going about our lives today, looking to improve ourselves. We're finding that there is actually a better way than by me taking charge of my life with my personal will. And it's 180 degrees from where we're socialized today, because it's really about stopping trying. But it's not just letting go and letting God in the old New Age kind of way, but it is knowing the truth. There is a parallel universe, a divine creation, held, controlled, and governed by the divine law of life, and it's perfect. And by us trying, striving, struggling, and planning, we're actually interfering with it. We're creating a veil that is preventing us from seeing this spiritual universe. We take charge of our life when we live in a world apart from the divine creation, a world that has more than one power. And I have something here from Herb Fitch in his La Jolla series, Class 9B, to read. Now let's illustrate this to see how easily our senses are trapped into the illusion. Let's just consider a normal human being. He seeks to improve himself. He wants to protect himself. He wants to make himself secure. Very normal. Why? Because he lives in the universe that God did not create. Appearances in this world stimulate him to action. So if he sees people in danger, he wants to help them. If he sees greed and corruption in high places, he wants to correct it. And if he sees evil anywhere, he wants to crusade against it. And all this is reasonable to him. He feels right about attacking and defending against everything that is wrong in the world. He's called a good human being. But what is he actually doing? He's actually letting the world mind use his human mind to declare that God is absent, that God is permitting evil, that the same God who permitted the evils to happen expects him to clean them up. He's been fooled into living outside God's universe. And in spite of all of his good intentions, he's a victim of the world mind that cosmic atheist, and unless he awakens from the sleep, his entire life will be committed to chasing shadows in order to improve the shadows. End of the quote. And so the secret here is we become conscious of the divine creation, the spiritual universe, that awakens us into this larger sense of life, this spiritual sense of life that doesn't have all of the problems that happen on a material sense level.
Well, one of the lines that you had recited from Herb Fitch when he says, because he lives in the universe that God did not create. But that's how we're brought up to believe, is God created the earth and the heavens, and in 7 days all was good. So how do we get past that?
Well, this is what we're learning, is how to come out of the old theology, the way religion has interpreted the scriptures and led humanity down this tomb of darkness, the belief in two powers and the cycle of death and rebirth. But here we're learning spirit isn't just something you believe in, but it's a demonstrable principle. It is provable. This divine creation that is right here, right now, when we are conscious of it, then we activate it in our experiences. We're socialized with sayings like, you're out of your mind, come to your senses. None of this has any place in divine science because spirit is the peace that passes understanding. We're moving beyond logic and reason. Divine creation is before thought and above corporeal sense. And this was the real message of the Christ. Ye are dead, and your life is hid with Christ in God. But we're reacting to something that we are creating in our own minds.
Well, I have a question for you. Earlier you had stated we take charge of our life when we live in a world apart from divine creation. So that I understand, but is it also spiritually sound for us to take responsibility for our physical lives and what's going on around us?
Well, this is something that I think is very different from divine science and the New Age approach to it, is that lesson that we talk about, Martha Wilcox got from Mary Baker Eddy, about being faithful and orderly with the objects of sense becomes the stepping stone. That's what enables us to be receptive to the deeper teachings of the divine creation. And she got that by reading Luke 16:10, and I'll read it. He that is faithful in that which is least is faithful also in much. He that is unjust in the least is unjust also in much. And then 11. If therefore ye have not been faithful in the unrighteous mammon, who will commit to your trust the true riches? This is 12. And if ye have not been faithful in that which is another man's, who shall give you that which is your own? End of quote. And this is another reason why I really like the Kriya Yoga that we teach, because it does give you strategies that we work with. Skillful use of thoughts, skillful use of breath, skillful use of water, skillful use of food, skillful use of exercise. These are ways of being faithful and orderly with the objects of sense. Then that creates this opportunity for us to be receptive to the deeper teachings.
Can we talk a little bit more about not being in charge of your life?
Yeah, to start to make that shift from living from human will and personal desire to living from grace, living under the jurisdiction of the divine will of the creative principle. And I have this quote that I got years ago from Spirit View website, and I'll read it. Reminding me that my desire to achieve an objective must be consciously transmuted from the shadow to the light. Thus, my desire for perfection, satisfaction, and success means my daily to-do list is in all things watch and pray, not from the perspective of a physical being struggling to fix or somehow manipulate the material shadow, but from the light of the highest understanding I have of my perfect, ever satisfying, and always successful spiritual nature that must therefore cast a corresponding shadow. End of quote. You start by believing in the divine creation. There is this parallel universe right here where I'm looking at a computer screen is the expression of the divine creative principle, the perfection of being. And by being conscious of this divine creation, then we stop thinking, trying, striving, struggling, and we watch, we wait, we listen, and we let spiritual light illuminate our thought until that belief begins to develop into what was called faith. You're making changes without doing anything physically or mentally anymore. You are letting this divine creation reveal itself to you.
Swami, you had said earlier, the divine creation is before thought and above corporeal sense. Could you just explain what that looks like? Some people may not understand what that means.
Yeah, the divine creation is invisible and intangible to material sense. And the material sense really is a mental image. We're creating whatever it is that we are perceiving by thinking, forming thoughts and opinions based on the information that's coming in through our corporeal senses. And for most of us, this is what we are calling reality. And we're accepting it, and we're believing in it, and we're perpetuating it. Now, in order for us to be receptive to the divine creation, we have to stop thinking. Can the mind free itself from its own creation? And the way that we do that is by stop creating it, stop producing this veil that is preventing us from seeing the truth of being. And so here we start to know that the divine creation is a spiritual image and not a mental image. And it cannot be perceived with the mind that we are accepting to get us through this lifetime, because that mind works on what is visible and tangible, or what is invisible and tangible, matter or thought, and spirit works on what is invisible and intangible. Which means in order for us to perceive the divine creation, we have to cultivate spiritual sense.
Well, we're going to pause right here to hear a word from our sponsor. So listeners, we'll be back with you in just a few moments. Kriya Yoga Theory 1, Human Development and 8 Essential Stages of Kriya Yoga. This program is a comprehensive course that will help you get your arms around the science of Kriya Yoga. It provides a clear understanding of the goals and objectives behind yoga, along with the physics of spirituality. It includes the practices, supportive concepts of Kriya Yoga, and the process in human development, apotheosis, the process of the human becoming divine. A complete guide on how to become a human in the adult state. Get the light in your soul and experience the simplicity and joy of union with the divine. This course is available in live classes at the ashram or online with 8 videos or 4 CDs. Visit our website, www.ipdtransform.com, for more information. Welcome back. For those of you just joining us, you're listening to The Voice of Yoga, and we are talking consciousness. So I'd like to get back to talking more about knowing the truth and how it can be a demonstrable principle when it is perceived spiritually.
Yeah, just because you're having a good day doesn't necessarily mean that you're conscious of the divine creation. And we've talked about this in Revelations. It's what looks like a lamb but speaks like a dragon. We can be having what we call a temporary sense of success, more of the pleasures and profits of the human experience, and not be spiritual. And so just working with the testimony of your senses is only part of what we're looking for. Your physical body, the entire human experience, is just the check engine light on the dashboard of consciousness. And we know all the good, beautiful, and true attributes belong to the divine creative principle. But there's a difference when it's happening karmically as opposed to consciously. And we really want to be conscious of the divine creation. And because consciousness is experience, we should also know that we can't be conscious of the divine creation and not have the fruits of the Spirit in our experience. But by the same token, we could be having a great day, everything's going good, I feel healthy, I'm happy, and there's plenty of money available to me, and not be conscious of the divine creation. But what we're striving for here is to come out of that personal sense of I-ness and experience the spiritual life, which is a permanent sense of success.
So I'd like to talk more about a statement that we have in the summary, and it says, discussing the differences between seeing with the material senses and beholding with the spiritual senses.
Yeah, I found it very helpful to make a distinction between thinking and knowing, or the difference between seeing with our material senses and beholding with our spiritual senses. And what I actually started to do was develop an exercise that I began to create from a statement Mary Baker Eddy made. And I'll read her statement. I saw the love of God encircling the universe and man, filling all space. And that divine love so permeated my own consciousness that I loved with Christ-like compassion everything I saw. This realization of divine love called into expression the beauty of holiness, the perfection of being, which healed and regenerated and saved all who turned to me for help. End of quote. Now, what I did with that is I turned it into an instructional version. And I start with, we must first behold the love of God encircling the universe and man, filling all space. Then second, allow this divine love to permeate our own consciousness so we can love with Christ-like compassion everything we see. Finally, third, realize divine love calls into expression the beauty of holiness and the perfection of being that heals, regenerates, and saves all who are conscious of it. End of exercise. Now, what this has become for me is kind of like a ladder that enables me to graduate from my 5 material senses and then to begin to activate my 7 spiritual senses. The 7 spiritual senses correspond with the 7 chakras in yoga or the 7 churches from Revelations in the Bible. And then working all of this with the knowledge that the outer world of matter is material sense, and the inner world of spirit is spiritual sense. And then applying the principle that the outer world of sense and the inner world of spirit become one when divine consciousness, divine truth, or divine love is your only consciousness. And so again, here we must recognize what we call the physics of spirituality. And that would bring us back to what John wrote 3:6. That which is born of the flesh is flesh, and that which is born of the spirit is spirit. This is the physics of spirituality. This is the like attracts like. We must know ourselves in the way that we are created in order for us to be known by this divine creation. So we're starting to learn again that you can't just do this academically or intellectually with that mind that can't bring forth the divine creation. We must graduate from material sense to spiritual understanding, what Mary Baker Eddy called to think with God as God.
So when we're at that point when we can witness or have instantaneous healing, that's a pretty good indicator we are in the divine mind.
Yeah, I would have to agree with that. I think healing is really one of the significators. It's not a goal in Christian Science to heal. But what I've also found is that if you are not healing the sick, reforming sinners, raising the dead, you're not even in the base camp of what this system is about.
So, Swami, why is letting go of this false sense and affirming the truth the secret?
Well, the main reason is because of what we call the physics of spirituality. You can't be material and spiritual at the same time. In order for us to graduate from this personal sense of self, we have to put off the old man, as it says in the Bible, before we can be receptive to the truth of our being. So we give up the belief in the many, the divided consciousness. We give up the belief in two powers. And then we accept spiritual identity, the one perfect divine life as the only life that I am. And I have something here from Bicknell Young, a work that he did called Oneness. I'll begin to read. As we know what this mind, capital N, knows what is taking place, we find mind, capital M, taking place. We find mind in full operation. We find that mind being ourselves. We find the oneness of being taking place, principle and its idea operating as one, not two. And here is the great point of departure, whether we are giving the Christian Science treatment, which is mind in full operation and expression, consciously understood, or whether the treatment is that of a man, even a spiritual man, thinking about God and the universe. This does not constitute the Christian Science treatment. Man cannot give a treatment, a Christian Science treatment. When we fail to see that God is our mind, then the thinking we do is necessarily about that mind or God, something outside of ourselves. It still suggests old theological theories. The only treatment there is mind in full operation and power. This is the great point of departure. Whether or not we have dominion with the moon under our feet, as it is under the feet of the woman clothed with the sun, with the Spirit, as John said. A Christian Science treatment never endeavors to right something that is wrong. That is not a Christian Science treatment. The consciousness of one's divine body, based upon the fact that God is the mind of man, begins to reveal what the universe and man are. And this is a Christian Science treatment. End of the quote. And so again, the secret is the mind that we are using can't bring forth the divine image. The term in the Bible was called repent. We often think that it means plead for forgiveness, but in truth it means think differently. Graduate from thinking with your material senses and activate your spiritual senses. Know the truth that will make you free. And the truth is there's only one life. There's only one mind. And it's perfect. It's eternal. It's self-existent power. And when you can accept that that is the only mind I am, that is the only life I am, you are consciously converting or transmuting from the shadow to the light.
So you've mentioned the word shadow a few times during the program so far. You're referring to the material world. Is that correct?
Yeah, I know at first it's somewhat difficult to accept, but what is appearing in our physical senses, our material senses, isn't real. It's a mental image. And as long as we continue to react to the testimony of our senses and we believe that it is real, we're hypnotized. We're in this trap, and we're actually giving it a life that it doesn't have. But the reverse is true. The minute we know the truth and we no longer believe in the shadow and we turn to the light, then that dispels the false sense of who we think we are, and it reveals the perfection of the divine creation.
Swami, could you talk more about helping us maybe rise above this false sense? Do you think that instructional version that you had reviewed with us earlier would be a good starting point for us?
Well, again, I think it's really important. We don't strengthen the mind. We're really trying to let go of. And that's why when you do something like this, you want to behold the love of God encircling the universe and man filling all space, rather than seeing. Am I thinking or am I knowing? Because we can think about this and we can talk about this with the mind that can't bring forth the divine image. It's like trying to get your email with a calculator. It just doesn't function that way. And I have something here from Herb Fitch, the La Jolla series, class 9B, that I think may really help us. I'll read it. You may have noticed that Jesus was not running around patching up God's universe. As a matter of fact, never once did he speak out against the entire Roman Empire, which was committing every possible human evil. He never attacked it. He never tried to remove the evil. He didn't teach us to fight injustice or to rise up and battle evil powers or to go to war against enemies. He didn't even teach us to defend ourselves or our neighbors. He did teach us to put up our sword, to stop improving this world, to stop defending ourselves against danger, to stop struggling, to keep the wolf from the door and pain from our suffering bodies. Was he mad, or did we miss his great point that he was exposing us to the material illusions and saying, stop, there's a better way, there's a divine way, a perfect way. God is not letting any of this happen. You're looking through material senses. You're looking at images within your own mind. You're trapped in the sense world. Your entire battle is imagery. Your frustration is imagery. Even your fear is imagery. The world mind is playing the entire scene with images. It's not God's work. We are not seeing God's universe. And by doing so, you are rejecting God. You are worshiping the world mind. Atoms have fooled you. Time images have fooled you. The belief in a power other than God has fooled you. The belief in mortal life has fooled you. You've got to pause. Step out of reason, out of logic. Step into your ascended self. Be what you are, divine self, immortal life, one complete self without the finite human division. End of quote. We can't just think that we are spiritual. We must know that we are spirit. And for us to know that we are spirit, we must know ourselves in the way that we are known by the Creator, which is spirit. But it's invisible and intangible to material senses. And so we rest, we watch, we wait in silence and in stillness until spiritual light reveals itself to us, until we activate our spiritual senses. And then we behold the love of God.
Well, it is that time to start breaking down our show for today, so listeners, be sure to visit the website www.ipdtransform.com. On the homepage, and you see the fading banner Blog Talk Radio. If you click that, that directs you to the Blog Talk Radio show catalog page. And then by clicking on the products tab and online classes, that will direct you to all the classes that Swami has available. So Swami, any other final thoughts about today's program?
Well, I would like to encourage people to join the Kriya Yoga Spiritual Advance, get the light in your soul, and walk by faith, not by sight. Namaste.
Thank you for listening to our program, The Voice of Yoga. This is Lisa Winton along with Swami Jayananda signing off. Have a wonderful Kriya Yoga kind of day. Namaste.